All right, family, welcome back. Like I said, we have another one of our brothers joining us now. We have Prince Akili.
How you guys doing,
Sir.
brothers?
And he is here to help us raise up the conversation about Black August. But before we really get into that, we want to, hear from our brothers with the experience being behind the walls is like. You mind just briefly sharing what you went in for and how long?
Yeah, how you guys doing? My name is Prince Akili. I come from Black Lives Matters prison chapter originally, and then here to the streets, Black Lives Matters Los Angeles. And I also coincide with Africa Town, whenever there's some type of work that's needed or that's available. Also, to let everybody know, my first name is Ryan Brown. I was sentenced to 30 years of incarceration for attempted murder and robbery. That they later found out that I had no part with being in it. When I was sentenced to the maximum of 30 years. From that 30 years, I went from juvenile hall. From juvenile hall, I went from YA. From YA, I went to prison institution. The first institution that I landed at was Pelican Bay State Prison. Pelican Bay State Prison was considered a lockdown institution. So an individual that's coming into these type of settings at the age of 18 years old, first not educated, not aware of the logistics of laws, not really comprehending the settings that which they're being placed in, and people being way older than you, it puts you in a disenfranchised situation to not really be a part of the system, and it puts you in a situation to where you really don't know what to do in the situation. So you become deaf, dumb, and blind to your fact. So when I became deaf, dumb, and blind to my fact of the institution that I was at, the time that I have, I didn't wake up until it was about 10 years in to my bed. Once that 10 years came in, I began hanging with various brothers like Jay Burton, who educated me on the laws, who took me down the right path to figuring out who I am as an individual, as a black person in a white supremacist system that, as we know, George Jackson came from. And a lot of the similarities from what I went through versus what George Jackson went through, when I went in there, I noticed a lot of white supremacy was also in the minds of individuals who was prisoners. What I mean by that is I couldn't go to certain showers. I couldn't go to certain places in the day room. I couldn't use certain phones. I couldn't eat with certain different races. So a lot of the things of which we know of Jim Crow law, it was now in my face in a prison institution setting. So now, I wasn't woken up then, but prison woke me up to what we're talking about today, of the supremacy, of the disenfranchisement, as well as the disadvantages that I was against. And that's what woke me up, and that's why I'm here.
Definitely. Kevin, how about you? You mind sharing what you went in for and how long you was in there?
Oh, no problem. I just want to say, though, Prince Akili, though, I much respect, brother, because that's a long battle that sometimes people have to go. But, I was convicted of kidnap robbery, and I was sentenced to life. So in 1983, I hopped on the Grey Goose, and they took me to, Chino. And then I got that harsh reality, that harsh wake up, in Chino, because when you think you bad on these streets,
Right.
but when you get to that prison, you're going to get a reality check. And the thing is that you're going to find your spot. You're going to find your spot. You got to find your spot, because if you can't find your mellow spot, it's going to be really rough. So, we went, he went to Pelican Bay. I went to Folsom. So I went to Old Folsom. And it was like going into a Civil War prison camp or something, when you rolled up. I was like, oh my God, I'm at the end of the world, boy. I done fucked up, you know what I'm saying? But I got through it, and I went on basically an educational thing, because I was a really small guy, so I felt that, I wasn't able to do much battle, so I started going to the library, I started educating myself, I started studying about, the struggle and so forth, and then I came across the works of George Jackson, and so my time through prison was one of educating other black men on the reality of our history, on the reality of the struggle, because I started studying, Che Guevara, Chica Antediop, and, just like everybody. I mean, we had to study everybody, And so by the time I got to Solano, well, I take it back. By the time I got to Donovan, we had started to study a Black History group. So we started to study Black History group, and that's sort of like got around the prison system, to a certain extent, because a lot of people just didn't have what it took to try to start an organization anymore. And the unfortunate part is that the struggle, as it once was under George Jackson, the Soledad brothers and so forth, for the most part, it had been pushed into the background. So it was more. It wasn't, the gangs hadn't really taken over in my time. The BGF was more seen as not a revolutionary organization anymore, but more of a gang now. When I got in 1983, matter of fact, even when I got to Folsom, they were not seen as what they used to be. So I came up with these realities, and I was like, wow, where did the revolution go? I didn't know. But then as I began to study, I found that everybody was locked up in the SHU program. You were either locked up in the SHU program or you was dead, because there wasn't nobody out there on these tiers that was serious revolutionaries from back in them 70s. When George Jackson was walking them, unless you was like really old. But when George Jackson was walking them blocks, what I'm saying? The Soledad brothers, yeah, you just like, that's just the way it was, So for me, the experience it was a very harsh experience. I did 22 years as a lifer. But I educated myself, and I helped to educate other black men, and that's what I hold on to as my accomplishment, because a number of us came out, very strong, very positive, with some goals and some objectives, and we've been on this side ever since. I've never been back, and I've always fought not just for my rights, but the rights of others. I have not done a real good job fighting for the brothers inside. I will admit that, but I fought for the black family out here, and I know that I have affected the lives of some of my brothers inside as well.
So before we go to this next break, you brought up something, Kevin, I did want to ask, because I was actually born about 6 months after Jonathan Jackson's courageous courthouse rebellion, and then 6 months after George Jackson, 6 months after my birth, George Jackson engaged in, his situation.
Right.
But you had shared with me the other day when you went in '83, the gang separation was not as big. But I know, Prince Akili, you went after the crime bill, when a lot more of our brothers were being taken off the streets,
Right.
who had gang activity. So in just the last couple minutes we had before this break, would y'all mind sharing the contrast between when you went in and when you went in, how the gang dynamic played impact?
Well, look, I'll start off because, Prince Akili spoke about the racism. I experienced more racism than gang activity. You know what I'm saying? Because most of the blacks, even though there was some division, you did have the Crips and the Bloods, but they were not as blown as it is today, As a matter of fact, in Prince Akili's time. And so I dealt with a lot of racism, You going through the school system, You sitting in class, you got white boys sitting over here, you got the brothers sitting over there, you got the Mexicans sitting over there, and pretty much everybody is divided, like the brother was saying, the showers, Matter of fact, we had a rotation where blacks go in on the showers, a certain rotation, and whites go in and the Mexicans go in, So it was really racially divided during my time, So the gangs wasn't so much an issue, but the bullies were the issue amongst the black folks. The bullies were the issues amongst the black folks in my time,
Yeah. Well, I will say this, and I'm not giving any credit to the system, but I will say the system found it a way to do a great job to keep black men, especially gang members, uneducated and not involved into black politics. In fact, when we lost the Black Panther movement, we lost structure. We lost the correction of politics. We also lost the dynamics of unity. and in fact, still, Bloods and Crips are not together. They're just now starting to play sports together. In some institutions, they don't want to play sports together, and in some institutions, they do. Far as like I said, I came from Pelican Bay. A lot of the guys that was in the shoes, that was Mexican Mafia, and a lot of people that was BGF, which is black men. A lot of people that was Blue Notes, which was Crips. A lot of people that was Bloodline or Nation, which was Bloods, was coming out to shoes to bring a unification of the brothers, for they can play sports together, as far as blacks and whites and Hispanics and etc. and Bloods and Crips. But still in all, the main problem that which we have in these prison institutions now is not so much of the gang problems, but it's the drug problems. You have individuals who's in there that's on that's getting high off the drug, that's on debts, that can't pay debts, so it's stopping races to come together, because now we have to stay separate because you don't know how to control your people. You have people now who's black, who's also feel like they're more empowered than their own older individuals. So when we talk about racism, when we talk about disenfranchisement with each other, when we talk about not unifying, when we talk about the new Jim Crow era, it's all sold into the function in prison. That's where it's at. So when we talk about the old and the new, and when we look at the time period of everybody is just getting abused mentally and physically, it's in prison.
All right, family. So again, we are here with one of what we hope to be two Black August, I guess you would call these podcasts. We're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to come right back and get more into what Black August is about.
That's right.